I'm Ethan, just a normal dude, and I've been hitched to Mia for the past 15 years. We've got a daughter, Lily, who's 13 now and probably too cool for her old man. I work as a mechanic at a local car factory. It was one of those warm, sunny April afternoons, perfect weather, really, when my phone started buzzing in my pocket. I wiped the grime off my hands, pulled it out, and saw the name on the screen, Travis, my neighbor. Now, that was odd. Travis is not the type to ring me up in the middle of a workday. Curious, I slid my thumb across the screen to pick up. Ethan, man, you gotta get home. Right now, he said, his voice all shaky and rushed, like he'd just seen a ghost. My gut did a little flip. What's going on? I asked. There's a moving van parked right in front of your place, he shot back. Some dudes are tossing furniture into it. My fingers clamped tighter around the phone. What the hell? Who are they? I stammered. No clue, but they're hauling off a ton of stuff, Travis said. And, Mia's there too. Figured you'd wanna know. Mia? My heart started thumping loud enough I could hear it in my ears. You sure about that? Dead sure, he replied. Hurry up and get over here. I didn't waste a breath. Shoved the phone back in my pocket and took off across the factory floor, my work boots smacking the concrete hard with every step. My brain was spinning like a busted engine. Was this some kind of bold-as-hell robbery in the middle of the day? Or something uglier? I got to my boss's office, gave the door a quick rap, and barged right in. Sir, I gotta leave, I blurted out. Right this second. My boss, a tough guy but fair, looked up from his stack of papers. What's the deal? Neighbor just called, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Someone's stealing from my house, loading my stuff into a van. His eyes got wide. Get out of here. Go. Didn't need to hear it twice. I spun around, bolted for the parking lot, my chest pounding like a drum. My shaky hands fumbled with the keys, but I finally ripped the car door open, hopped in, and fired up the engine. The tires squealed as I peeled out, my hands locked on the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I had no clue what mess I was speeding toward, but one thing was crystal clear, this wasn't just some random break-in. And Mia being there. That flipped the whole damn game upside down. I slammed the gas pedal and raced home. When I pulled up, the brakes screeched as I skidded to a stop. My pulse was hammering as I flung the car door open and charged toward the driveway. Sure enough, there he was, a tall, skinny guy with a cocky swagger, barking orders at two other fellas who were stuffing my furniture into a moving van. Hey! I yelled, storming straight at him. He barely flicked his eyes my way before muttering, "Keep your nose out of it, pal." Big mistake. That lit the fuse. Before I could even think it through, my fist smashed into his jaw, and he went down hard, sprawling across the pavement. A quick grunt popped out of him as he hit the ground, but I wasn't done yet. I jumped on him, fists swinging wild, fury bubbling up as I hammered him into the dirt. You think you can just take my stuff? I snarled, landing a solid hit. In the middle of the damn day. Another punch. He groaned, throwing his arms up to block me, but I wasn't letting off. With one hand, I yanked my phone out and mashed 911, breathing heavy as I growled into it, "Some guy's robbing my house. I've got him pinned." My knuckles stayed ready for more as the dispatcher's calm voice cut in, "Sir, go inside and lock the door. Cops are coming." I let out a rough laugh. "I've got this under control." Then a scream sliced through the air. "Ethan, what in God's name are you doing?" I whipped my head around and saw Mia running toward us, her face all twisted up in shock. She dropped down next to the guy, hands shaking as she checked his bruised-up face. "Why'd you hit him?" she yelled, her voice dripping with anger. I blinked, thrown off for a second. "You know this jerk?" Her head snapped up, eyes burning into me. Yeah, she spat. He's my boyfriend. A cold jolt hit me like a slap. The air whooshed out of my lungs. What? That's all I could choke out before my boot slammed into his groin, curling him up like a shriveled bug. You're my wife, I roared, shaking with rage. And you've got a boyfriend? I kicked him again, watching him squirm. Mia screeched, "Stop it, Ethan, stop." But I wasn't ready to quit. I spun toward the moving van, my mind racing a mile a minute. Why's this damn van even here? I demanded. The guy just moaned, clutching himself. His silence pissed me off more, so I drove my foot into him again, third time's the charm, right? Out of the corner of my eye, I caught the two movers leaning against the truck, arms folded, smirking like they were at a bar fight. Guess they liked the free entertainment. Hell, I might have too, if I wasn't the one swinging. Then sirens wailed, and two cop cars rolled up fast. Officers stepped out, hands hovering near their guns, sizing up the chaos, me towering over a beat-up guy, Mia kneeling beside him, and the movers watching like it was a damn circus. A big, stern-looking cop with broad shoulders strode over and planted a hand on my chest, pushing me back. "Step away, sir," he ordered. I clenched my fists but backed off, still huffing. "I'm the one who called you," I said, irritation boiling over. He raised an eyebrow. "That right?" "Yeah," I snapped. "Neighbor tipped me off, said some guys were loading my stuff into a van. I got here and saw this clown running the show." I jerked my thumb at the guy still groaning on the ground. The cop glanced over at Mia, who was still cradling the guy's face, her eyes red with fury, and maybe a little guilt. "Ma'am, what's the story here?" he asked. She looked up, swiping at her tears before speaking. "This is Nathan Brooks," she said, her voice wobbly but firm. "He's my boyfriend." My stomach knotted up again, even though I'd already heard it. Her saying it so plain, like it was nothing, hit me like a sucker punch. "I'm done with Ethan," she went on, her tone ice cold now. "And I'm taking my share of the furniture." The cop turned back to me, studying my face. I probably looked as stunned as I felt. My head was spinning, 15 years of marriage, a house, a kid, all crashing down to this. A moving van and some smug jackass named Nathan sprawled out on my driveway. The cop cleared his throat. "Mrs. Carter," he said, steady but no nonsense. The cop tilted his head at Mia. "Did you even tell your husband you were walking out?" She froze for a second, then jutted her chin out, all defiant-like. "Nope," she said flatly. The officer let out a long, tired breath, rubbing his forehead like he was fighting a headache. "Look, ma'am, here's the deal," he said, glancing over at the moving van before locking eyes with her again. "You can't just grab furniture and go. You've got to file for divorce first, let a judge divvy up the stuff, and then you both sign papers spelling out who gets what." Mia's face went a little pale, like the wind got knocked out of her sails. "What you're pulling here," he went on, his voice getting a sharper edge, "it's against the law. If your husband wants to press charges, this'll go down as theft." She sucked in a breath, her eyes flashing with a mix of shock and irritation. Spinning toward the two movers, she barked, "Put it all back," her tone tight and urgent. The guys, still smirking like this was primetime entertainment, just shrugged and started hauling the stuff back inside. The cop folded his arms, his patience clearly on its last legs, and laid it out plain. "You can take your clothes and go. I'll stick around to keep this civil, till you're outta here." Mia whipped around, her eyes blazing at him. "My husband's the one who should leave," she snapped, shooting me a glare like I was the bad guy. I fired right back, "This house is my mom's, lady, you've got no claim to it." She screeched, "No, you get out. I deserve to stay here." That was it for the cop. You could practically hear his last nerve snap. "Ma'am," he said, his voice thick with annoyance, "you just tried to swipe your husband's stuff, and now you're whining about kicking him out of his own place when I'm giving you an easy exit? He let out a scoff and shook his head. Let's see if he wants to file theft charges. He turned to me, waiting for my call. Before I could get a word out, Mia threw her hands up. Fine, I'll grab my crap, she hissed, storming into the house. I stood there, watching her go, my brain still scrambling to catch up. 17 years with this woman, Lily's mom, and she'd been sneaking around with some guy, plotting to clean me out and disappear. A few minutes later, she came stomping back with 2 big suitcases. As she headed for the door, I held up a hand. Hang on a sec, I said, nodding to the cop. I want those bags checked. Mia stopped dead, then turned real slow, her jaw dropping like I'd slapped her. Ethan, you're gonna humiliate me like this? She snarled. Don't you trust me? That cracked me up, in the worst way. The movers, who'd been soaking up the drama like it was a soap opera, busted out laughing, loud and obnoxious. Even the cops swapped smirks, one of them shaking his head like he couldn't believe the nerve. The head officer sighed. Open em up, ma'am, he said, firm as steel. He's got every right to look. With a glare that could have melted ice, Mia unzipped the first bag and stepped back. I knelt down and started digging through it. At first, it was just shirts and pants, but then, tucked between her sweaters, I found my laptop and phone charger. I yanked em out and held em up. She let out a little huff. I need those, she muttered. I gave her a short, bitter chuckle and shook my head. Tell your boyfriend to hook you up, I said, ice in my voice. He's your provider now. And that was it, Mia was gone. She'd packed her bags, grabbed her so-called true love, and walked right out of my life. Nathan was still hobbling from the ass-kicking I'd dished out, which gave me a flicker of satisfaction, but it faded fast. The house went dead quiet, too quiet, and the weight of what just went down started sinking in. Then the front door flew open. In walked Lily, backpack slung over her shoulder, her forehead creasing as she clocked the chaos, furniture half moved, suitcases dumped open, movers' boot prints all over the floor. She dropped her bag and stared at me. Dad, what the heck happened here? I let out a long breath, rubbing my temples. Come take a load off, I said, patting the couch next to me. She plopped down, eyeing me like she was waiting for the punchline. I sucked in a deep breath. Your mom's decided to split, I said, keeping my tone steady. She's taken off with her new guy. Lily blinked at me. Then, out of nowhere, she shrugged and said, Oh, you mean Nathan. I whipped my head toward her, my fingers tightening around the whiskey glass I'd grabbed. Hold up, you knew about him? She gave me this look, like I'd asked something obvious. Yeah, Dad, she said. Mom told me all about him. He's her first love, her one true love, she says. I just stared, her words hitting me like a brick to the chest. I got up, shuffled over to the bar, and poured myself a stiff drink, my hand steady even though I was a mess inside. Then I sat back down, glass in hand. All right, I said, keeping my voice level, fill me in on this Nathan guy. Lily leaned back, crossing her arms all casual-like. Mom's always talked about him, she said. He was her first big romance, and she never got over him. She only married you 'cause you were a solid pick, a good, dependable guy. I let out a dry, hollow laugh and shook my head. A solid pick, huh? That's what I've been reduced to, not a husband, not someone she loved, just a safe fallback plan. I took a swig of whiskey and looked at Lily. So, kid, you think your mom was right to ditch me for this Nathan dude? She didn't even flinch. Oh, totally, she said, like it was no big deal. You were just a setup. She and Nathan were destined to be together. He only left her back then 'cause he had to study overseas. Now he's back, she went on, and Mom deserves to be with him. I nodded slow, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. Okay, I muttered, mostly to myself. Real interesting. I leaned back, letting out a heavy breath through my nose as the whole mess pressed down on me. So, I said, half talking to the air, all these years she spent as my wife, that was just a sham. Lily paused for a split second, a tiny flicker of doubt in her eyes. But then she shrugged it off. Not a sham, exactly, she said. More like a temporary fix. I sipped my whiskey again, the burn sliding down my throat, but it didn't touch the cold truth settling into my bones. I set the glass down, my fingers drumming on it as I chewed over her words. All right, I started, if Nathan hadn't taken off back then, your mom would have married him, and you'd be his kid. That'd be the dream, huh? Lily's lips curved into a little dreamy smile. Yeah, she said, no hesitation. Like some perfect love story. I let out a quiet, bitter chuckle and shook my head. Interesting, I mumbled under my breath. Then another thought slammed into me. If Lily knew, who else was in on this little secret? Who else knows about Nathan? I asked, fixing my eyes on her. She didn't even need to think. Oh, Grandma Diane knows, she said, casual as ever. My gaze darkened a bit at that. So, Diane, your mom's mom? I asked. Yep, Lily said with a nod. I tipped my head back. All right, so she's in on it too. What about Grandpa Paul, her husband? I pressed. Lily just shrugged. Oh, he knows too, she said, like it was no big thing. My jaw tightened, fingers squeezing the whiskey glass for a second before I forced myself to chill out. How long you been clued in on this? I asked, eyeing her. She slouched back on the couch, fiddling with a stray thread on her sweater. Maybe 6 months or so, she mumbled. 6 months. My wife, my kid, my in-laws, they'd all been in the loop. And not a single one bothered to give me a heads up. I nodded, my brain racing faster than my heart could keep pace. Real interesting, I said under my breath. Then I got to my feet. Lily's eyes flicked up at me, a spark of curiosity lighting her face. What's your next move, Dad? She asked. I turned to her, a slow grin creeping across my mouth, not the warm, fuzzy kind, but something darker, sharper. I'm gonna hand everybody just what they've got coming, I said. Lily's smile didn't budge, steady as a rock, like she was dead sure of herself. You've done right by Mom, Dad, she said, her tone carrying this weird, calm approval. You gave her what she had coming. If she wants her true love now, let her have him. I tilted my head, watching my daughter with a quiet, twisted kind of amusement. No wobble in her voice. No shame. No doubt, just pure conviction that her mom was in the right. I grinned back, slow and careful. Don't sweat it, sweetie, I said, smooth as butter. I ain't planning to stand in your mom's way. She's gotten everything she deserves, and I'll make damn sure she keeps getting it down the road. A little something flashed in Lily's eyes, but she kept her mouth shut. I stepped closer, reached out, and tucked a loose strand of her hair behind her ear, gentle but steady. And you, my little princess, I went on, voice low and solid, you're gonna get what's coming to you too. Her smile slipped, just for a heartbeat. I let the quiet hang heavy between us before stepping back. Then, without another word, I snagged my coat and headed out the door. I drove straight to my lawyer's place. By the time I rolled up, I'd already mapped out exactly what I wanted. The receptionist flashed me a polite smile, but as soon as I dropped my name, she hustled me right into Mr. Harrison's office. Didn't figure I'd see you today, Ethan, Harrison said, kicking back in his chair. What's up? I settled into the seat across from him, hands clasped in my lap. I need a divorce, I said flat out. And I need it fast. His eyebrows arched a bit. Got it, he said, sitting up straighter. Anything particular you're aiming for? I leaned in. Full control of my stuff, I told him. Cut her down to the bare minimum the law allows, no extras, no alimony, no wiggle room for later. If she wants more, she can hit up Nathan for it. Harrison nodded slow, chewing on my words. And custody? I smirked. She can have Lily, they're a perfect pair. He quirked a brow but didn't push it. All right, he said, scribbling notes already. I'll get the ball rolling and push it through quick. With this setup, it shouldn't take long. Good, I said, standing. Keep me posted. Then I was out, heading straight for the bank. The teller gave me a nod. What can I do for you today, sir? I want to drain my joint account, I said, sliding my ID over the counter. She tapped away at her computer, cool as ever, until she saw the total. Her eyes darted up, cautious. Everything, sir. Yep, I said, then grinned. Wait, leave $2 in there. She paused, then nodded. A few minutes later, she handed me a fat envelope stuffed with cash. Want it counted out? She asked. Nah, I said, tucking it into my coat. Next up, my office. I parked, strolled in like it was any old day, and made a beeline for HR. Hey, Ethan, the HR manager said with a wave. You good? Yeah, I said, flashing a grin. Just need to tweak my 401k beneficiaries, take Mia off. She blinked. Oh, no problem, we'll handle it now. I signed the forms, then tackled the next job, a quick call to my insurance folks. In minutes, Mia was scrubbed from every policy I had. Last stop, my mom. She picked up on the second ring. Ethan, you okay? I took a slow breath, then let it out. Mom, I said, I figured you should hear this straight from me. I laid it all out, Mia's double cross, Lily's cold take on it, the unshakable certainty in my kid's voice. Mom went quiet for a sec after I finished, then let out a dry, well, guess the apple's right under the tree, huh? I chuckled low. Sure didn't roll far, I said. My grin sharpened. But I'm gonna keep that apple pinned right where it belongs. She didn't reply, just let out a slow breath, a mix of giving up and getting it. She knew me too well to think I'd let this slide. We chatted a bit longer before I hung up. The next day, Mia got served. I knew right where she'd be, her office, probably glowing from her fling with Nathan. She'd seen this coming, no question. She figured I'd fight back. But expecting it and living it? Two different beasts. At first, she stayed cool. I bet she thought it'd be the usual deal, half the pot, a neat split, maybe some alimony to keep her cozy. She thought I'd play it safe. Wrong move. I could picture it, her flipping through those papers, her calm cracking as her fingers shook a little. Then it hit her. The panic. The dawning truth. She was walking away with squat. The house? My mom's, not mine to split. The furniture? Same deal. Alimony? Forget it, our paychecks were neck and neck. Just child support, and only till Lily hits 18 in 2 years. She probably scanned those pages a dozen times, hunting for a crack to slip through. But I'd sealed it tight. Not long after, my phone buzzed. I let it ring twice before picking up, voice steady. Hey there. This ain't fair. Mia's voice came through, sharp and frazzled. Half of everything's mine, Mia snapped over the phone. That's how it works, Ethan. I leaned back in my chair, a little grin tugging at my lips. Oh, really? I said, keeping it light, almost playful. Yeah, she shot back, all fire and venom. I was your wife, I've got a right to half. I let a slow breath ease out, then hit her with, well, then I oughta get half of your stuff too, right? Dead silence on her end. I could practically see her brain grinding to a halt, the truth dawning on her. My grin stretched wider. Guess we'll let the court sort it out. The day of the divorce hearing finally rolled around. I strolled into the courtroom with my lawyer, Jake Harrison, at my side. Guy looked like a cat that just caught a mouse, smug as hell, loving every second of this chaos. He lived for this stuff, and I knew he was about to have a field day. A few minutes later, Mia showed up with her lawyer, Sophie Bennett. Jake caught sight of her, licked his lips, and muttered under his breath, "I'm gonna crush her." I glanced over, eyebrow cocked. "Same here," I said without missing a beat. He shot me a sideways look, then smirked. "I meant in the courtroom," he clarified, though the glint in his eye said we were on the same wavelength. I felt a twinge of heat in my cheeks, but the ridiculousness of it almost made me laugh. Then the judge walked in, and the chatter died fast. Sophie popped up first, all cool and collected as she faced the judge. "Your Honor, my client's husband's flat out refused to pay alimony or cough up any kind of settlement. We're asking for half his assets, her legal due as his spouse." The judge barely blinked before Jake stood, smoothing his suit like he owned the place. "Your Honor," he said, "my client's wife hasn't offered him half her assets either, and she's dodged any settlement talk too." The judge's brow creased, his eyes bouncing between me and Mia. "What are you getting at?" he asked. Jake sauntered toward the bench, casual as can be. "Here's the thing, Your Honor, they pull in damn near the same paycheck. So I'm stuck wondering, do I push for alimony for my guy, or hand it over to her?" The judge gave us both a hard look, then let out a sharp huff. "If their incomes match, neither's getting alimony," he said. Mia stiffened, her fists balling up on the table. Before she could open her mouth, Sophie jumped in quick. "Your Honor, there's more." Ethan cleaned out their joint account, left just $2 in there. Jake didn't even twitch, he looked like he'd just won the lottery. He stepped up, smooth as silk. "That's precisely what my client's wife put into that account," he said. A beat of quiet hung in the air. The judge turned to Mia, waiting. "Anything else?" Sophie paused, then nodded. "Yes, Your Honor, we've also got the issue of child custody." Before she could finish, Jake slid in, all confidence. "We've already offered full custody to the other side. My client's not looking for visitation, and will keep paying child support till she's 18, 2 more years." Lily let out a loud gasp, her voice breaking as she yelled, "Dad, you can't ditch me, I'm your kid." I didn't turn around. My jaw locked tight, hands curling into fists under the table, but I kept staring straight ahead. I'd made up my mind, and I wasn't backing off now. The judge, though, shifted his focus to Lily, his face softening as he waved her up. "Got something to say, young lady? Step forward." She hesitated, then shuffled to the witness stand, looking small and shaky. When she finally spoke, her voice wobbled. I didn't think my dad stopped loving me." Before she could go on, Jake stood, adjusting his suit with that easy swagger of his. "Your Honor, mind if I toss a few questions her way?" Sophie shot up. "Your Honor, she's only a kid." The judge raised a hand, cutting her off. "Let it go," he said. "Go ahead, Mr. Harrison." Jake stepped toward Lily. "You love your dad, kid?" She sniffled, then nodded. "Yeah." He gave a little nod back. "You respect him?" Another sniff. "Yeah." A quiet pause settled in before Jake dropped the next one. "So why re your folks splitting?" Lily's lip quivered. "'Cause Mom's old boyfriend came back from Europe, and now they wanna be together. So she's leaving Dad." Jake tilted his head just a touch. "Sounds like your mom either never loved your dad, or she loved this ex more than him, huh?" Lily's mouth opened, but nothing came out. She stared at Jake, then dropped her eyes to the floor, the courtroom going dead silent. Lily squirmed, tears streaking her face as she flicked her gaze between him and me. I still wouldn't look at her. My hands stayed clasped tight. This right here, this was the moment I'd been holding out for. So, Lily, Jake pressed on, were you torn up about your dad losing his marriage? She faltered. I saw her peek at me, fishing for some kind of reaction, but I gave her nothing. She turned back to Jake, lips shaking, and mumbled, no. I was glad for Mom. Jake's eyebrow arched. Glad for your mom? She nodded, wiping her nose. Yeah. He let out a slow breath through his nose, rubbing his chin like he was mulling it over real dramatic-like. Got it. So, Lily, you didn't give a damn how your dad felt. You were cool with the divorce. She swiped at her eyes with her sleeve. Yeah, she said. Mom was gonna be with her true love. Jake whistled low and shook his head. Wow. True love, huh? He paced a bit, then stopped, locking eyes with her. Let's break this down, Lily. You didn't care about your dad's feelings. You told him not to fight this divorce, to just let your mom walk away. You figured he should lose his wife and suck it up, all 'cause your mom deserved her happiness, right? Her breathing hitched, uneven. Yeah, she whispered. Jake's face turned stone cold. He stepped closer, voice dropping low and sharp, every word cutting deep. Then tell me, Lily, why should he give a damn about you? The silence hit like a brick wall. The courtroom, buzzing with murmurs and sidelong looks just a second ago, went still as a graveyard. Lily gaped at Jake, eyes wide, mouth hanging open like his words had sucked the life out of her. Jake didn't flinch. He leaned in just a hair, voice steady as steel. One last thing, Lily, something you said to your dad, word for word. He glanced at me quick, then back to her. If Nathan hadn't left, your mom would have married him, and you'd be his kid. That'd be the perfect picture, yeah. He let that sit heavy in the air, then pinned her with his stare. And you said, yeah, just like a fairy tale romance. Lily sucked in a shaky breath. Jake edged closer, his tone steady as a rock. That sound right, Lily? She froze, cornered with no way to dodge the truth she'd tossed out so casually before. Yeah, she finally muttered, admitting it. Jake gave a quick nod, like that was all he needed to hear, but he wasn't letting up yet. You wanted to be Nathan's kid, he said. You were ready to ditch the dad who stayed up all night last year when you were burning up with a fever, the same guy who never skipped a recital, a parent-teacher night, or a game. Lily squeezed her eyes shut, like she could shut out the words hammering her. But Jake kept going, no mercy. You were fine walking away from the man who made sure you got those roller skates, even if it meant he wore the same 3 shirts to work for 2 years straight. He shook his head, voice tinged with disbelief. The same guy who's now handing you exactly what you asked for, a family with Nathan and your mom. He let the quiet sink in, heavy and thick, pressing down on her. Then he dropped the final punch. So what's the problem with that? Lily crumpled, sobs ripping out of her, shoulders trembling as she broke. I'm sorry, Dad, she choked through the tears. I wasn't thinking right. Don't leave me, please. For the first time in that courtroom, my cool started to crack. My throat tightened up, and my eyes went blurry for a split second. Part of me wanted to rush over, wrap her up, tell her I'd never walk away. But I couldn't budge. I locked my jaw, kept my back stiff, and shoved down the chaos swirling inside me. The judge, who'd been eyeing the whole thing like a hawk, let out a breath and turned to Lily. That's enough, kid, he said, softer now. You can step down. She sniffled, swiping at her wet face as she shuffled back to her seat, still crying, though quieter. The judge swung his sharp stare over to Sophie. Ms. Bennett, he said, a bite of impatience in his tone, Mr. Harrison cut you off earlier. Go ahead. Sophie stood, that smug look plastered on her face again. Thank you, Your Honor, she said, straightening her jacket and clearing her throat. My client and her fiancé don't want custody of the kid. They're tying the knot soon and don't want her around. A stunned hush blanketed the room. The judge's face turned a wild shade of red, his eyes darting to Mia, who sat rigid, dodging everyone's looks. Lily, hearing that, shattered all over again, her sobs raw and jagged, slicing through the silence. The judge rubbed his temples, looking like he'd had it up to here. Then he turned to me. "Mr. Taylor," he said, frustration dripping off every word, "you don't want custody. Your wife doesn't either. What the hell are you two playing at? This pride and stubbornness is gonna wreck this kid's life." I let out a slow breath, pulling my thoughts together before standing. "Your Honor, my mom, Clara Evans, will take Lily," I said. "I've already talked it over with her, she's ready to step up and take full responsibility." The judge gave me a long, hard look, then nodded. Without missing a beat, he slammed his gavel down. "Custody goes to Mrs. Clara Taylor," he announced. "Both parents will pay child support. No alimony, no settlements, the divorce is done." The gavel's bang rang out, final as a slammed door. I glanced at Jake, who'd been watching it all with a half-amused smirk. He chuckled low and leaned in. "That," he whispered, grinning, "was the quickest divorce I've ever seen." Court wrapped up, and I headed to my mom's place. Lily was already there, slumped next to her, head down, tears still rolling. Mom had a hand on her back, rubbing slow circles to calm her, but Lily's crying wouldn't quit. I took a deep breath and sat beside her. For a minute, I just watched her sob, the weight of the day piling up on my shoulders. Then I spoke, soft but steady. "Sweetheart," I said, "this ain't some fairy tale we're living in, it's the real deal." Lily lifted her head a little, her puffy eyes locking onto mine. She sniffled but stayed quiet. "I never wanted to ditch you," I went on, "but I needed you to feel what it's like when the people you care about turn their backs, like you're just some worn-out pair of shoes they're tossing in the trash." She flinched, fresh tears welling up, like she wanted to argue but couldn't. "We forget what folks do for us," I said, holding her gaze, "'cause we figure it's their job to look out for us. And then we act like they don't deserve a damn thing, not love, not a thank you, not even a shred of respect." Lily wiped her nose on her sleeve, lips quivering, but she was soaking in every word. "Love's a give-and-take thing," I finished.